Parent Entrepreneur Power. Conversation number 159.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? Entrepreneur Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? All right, Power Parents, welcome to the conversation. You know who I am. I've introduced myself many times, so you know who you're listening to. But I get to chat with someone I can't wait. Music has been a theme since my oldest son is studying music, and I play the cello, so I love music. But I've been getting into some really interesting people in the music world, and here is one of the most interesting I get to talk to. So welcome to the conversation, please, Jim Jozwiak. He is the president and owner of BandforToday. Hello, Jim. How you doing?
Good. I'm great. How are you, Mary?
It's winter. I'm a little chilly, but I got myself all nice and cozy. So how can I complain? I woke up today, right? I'm good. So, all right, let's start off, we always do, with once upon a time. I like to look at it because it was in the past. We've got these businesses going now, but let's go all the way back. How did you get into building a business and raising a family at the same time? Tell us that story. Which came first, the business or the kids?
I had to think about that, and what I thought about was the business came first. The fast background, I was a professional trumpet player for many years in Chicagoland, and which means that I was a freelance player, and I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And my last boss was when I was 17, and I'm now 63. So as a freelance player, I was teaching some and private teaching. Most musicians pick up some extra money teaching. So I was teaching private lessons in high school, was hanging out with a friend of mine who was also teaching. And he told me that he was teaching in a public school that had lost their music program. And he was teaching groups. So, and I'll get to the context of the kids, but he was teaching group lessons and he was making much more money than I was. Mm-hmm. And I went, I think that there's a business here. So I thought we can easily hire teachers to do this. And, it's basically margin, how much can you charge and how much can you pay and the rest of it's yours. So that's how the business started. That was in my early 30s and wasn't married at the time. Met my wife in the theater. I was playing, I might have been Little Shop of Horrors. She would not be happy if I didn't remember the show, but she was an actress and singer. And now as a business owner successfully also. But we met in the theater and she had a 1-year-old at the time. And we got together and got married. And so my Brittany came in with me as a 1-year-old. And at that point, my business was a couple of years into it. As my wife likes to say, I had potential. So, which I found to be funny and I still use. So the potential worked out. But it was a smooth thing for me. As I said, I was an entrepreneur already. I was in that mode. I worked as a professional in the evenings in the theater and doing gigs while I grew the business during the day. And so the business grew little by little. It was profitable from the first year on, and it sort of transitioned. Had then the next 2 kids as we went along, and that was that.
And it just they all got thrown into the pot together, and you stir it up, and life happens.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me about the business. So you mentioned, you kind of skirted over that one a little bit where your friend was saying that he was teaching groups in public schools and you went, hey, he's making more money. I might want to do that. So Tell me a little bit more about BandforToday. I'm assuming that that's what that morphed into. Yes. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So what we are is an outsourced company for schools that have lost their music programs. they can turn to our company and we can supply a band and piano program for their school. So in the 80s when this started, and since then, many fine arts programs have been cut from schools. And there's two parts of this. So I'll stay on the money part for a second. As an outsourced company, we fee-base parents for our services. So if you are a principal and have need of a band director or a music teacher, I can give you one for free, which is an incredible selling point. And it sounds like a scam, but it's really not, because I'll just say, you know what, give me time to see your kids. We will supply the teacher. We will bill the parents. And, so they get a wonderful band program, instruments, music, concerts, solo contests. And some schools that have been with me for the 33 years I've been doing this have never paid a penny to our company, even though they've had professional teachers in their school. So, so that's sort of the essence of what we do. The company was regional or Chicagoland for about 30 years, and 4 years ago we went national. So now we have schools in Los Angeles and New York and Orlando and Phoenix and just around the country. And the reason I was getting to that point was that some of that business model has changed a bit. And especially in New York City and now a lot in Chicago, principals or administrators will say, hey, our parents can't afford this. We want to fund this. So I had to change some of the business model where, which was interesting. And I just had to come up with some ideas and they say, well, how much will this cost me? I said, well, tell me your budget. I'll tell you how many kids we can see, how many instruments we got, music stands, and a whole routine. So that business model got changed a bit. Especially in the national scene. So that's what we do. We're an outsourced company for schools.
Wow. Okay. And I'm thinking back because when I went to high school, I would not have the music in my life that I do without that high school. Actually, it started in middle school. We called it junior high back in my old days. And I'm not much younger than you. So, but without that program, I would not be using music in my life the way I am. And I know my kids probably would have a much higher chance of not being in band and playing the instruments they do without that first band program. And I can go back to that high school and tell you they no longer have a music program at all. And so they are a perfect opportunity. But yes, the community, it no longer supports it. The school can't support it, and the community isn't supporting it. So, okay. So now I see how that individual playing gigs, playing the pit, and doing private lessons changed and morphed into group lessons and now this outsourced program for communities. So I imagine that you talk a lot with PTOs and PTAs to actually navigate into their schools. Is that right?
Generally, no. It's mostly principle-based decisions. There's a couple things about this. One is that when we first started in Chicago, where I'm based, there were 350 to 400 Catholic elementary schools. And not only do public schools lose funding, but Catholic schools cannot afford band directors, without a doubt. So we got schools immediately. And once one principal heard about us and there were these councils, it was like, it went fast.
On fire.
So, so in those schools, which I really like working in more private school settings, generally because the principals just make the decisions. I don't have to go to PD. I don't have to go. It's like, first of all, it's free. So they're signing off on something. If I sometimes tell principals, I said, would you turn down a free math teacher or something? It's like, no. So, and I'm a pretty straight ahead guy. I don't consider myself like a sales guy. It's like, hey, this is what we have and this is what we're doing. And because one of the nice things about being successful is I don't really need their school. It's nice to get it. I love getting new schools and new accounts, but I don't have to have your school. In other words, I'm a little bit more in the driver's seat as far as this is how we run our programs, because you get some responses like, oh, we need this and this and this to say that, but I can't teach music kids in that way. So I didn't. I'll give you one fast story. When I first started the company, it was a large school district, public school district that lost their funding. And they had in the old days, when in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you had these school districts that had band directors, and a lot of them, and they were well respected and did great things. And my company was sort of an upstart outsider that was disliked. My intention was not to replace band directors, but for schools that lost it. So this large school district in a fairly low-income area lost their program. They had 12 elementary schools in just one part of this district. So they brought us in and of course the place was in an uproar because they were cutting music and arts and everything. So the school board brought us into this meeting, and I'm young and I haven't talked in front of people at that point. And on the school board is guys with doctorates and the masters and all this contention stuff. So they said, we've got two representatives here from BandforToday, and we'd like them to tell you what they're proposing to do. So I'm standing there, my legs are shaking, at that point, as I stood up there and told them, and the band directors that were there, the ones that had been fired, were very against us and everything. But we ended up getting it and doing a good job for a few years. So that was a long story to say that I don't talk to many PTAs or anything, mostly principals. And they're the decision makers. So that's how that goes.
Yeah, and I would imagine that because being even with my kids' high school. Okay, so I have one that is finishing his first semester in college right now, and the other one is a sophomore in high school. And so we went through all of my oldest son's high school career, and I'm always part of the band booster program, and so they have a band director. The band director just retired, so the new band director just came in, and that their marching program alone basically costs like $60,000 a year just to have the kids march and go to competitions and feed them and have uniforms and all the things that go around just the marching band to support the football games, and then their competitions. And so being part of the band boosters, I can understand that it would, I cut a check myself just to let my kid be part of music, because the only thing that's paid for in that school is the band director and the room. That's it.
Right.
They have a few instruments, but I supply my own kid's instrument. I supply my own kid's private lessons if he wants it. So other than the band director, nothing else is funded. And it takes way more than just the band director's salary to support a music program and allow these kids to do things with it. So that's why I was thinking you would probably have some kind of entrance, because how do you get parents to pay for it?
Well, part of that is recruiting. We work mostly in elementary schools. We have, over the years, we've been in a few different high schools, but high schools don't work well for us just because of scheduling and kids getting ready for college and all the different requirements that are involved. So we're mostly in elementary and middle schools. And the most important thing there is recruiting. So our recruiting is really, really strong. We have taught over 30,000 students at the time we've been doing this, which means this fall, between August and the end of September, we probably saw 6,000 students, where we did demonstration concerts, tried them on instruments. We'd call it instrument matching, sent home great flyers of music advocacy. So our job, one of the reasons we're so good at this is that I have the biggest vested interest, because this is how I make my living. I want your kid in our program desperately. So, and if I don't, and the principal, I don't want to say they don't care, but they don't have any they're not paying for this. Mm-hmm. If I get 10 kids in your school to play an instrument, or I get 50, it's like, it's all on me as an entrepreneur, which I really like, because I like controlling my own destiny and controlling my own business. So it's like my risk. Some schools hit really big, some schools are small, but that's how some of those go. So the recruiting is incredibly important, and the marketing to parents. Principals will sometimes say, oh, why don't we do a survey like this? And I say, you can do a survey. I said, but here's how the survey is going to go. The mom's going to get this letter saying, we're thinking about having a band program, blah, and the mom's going to go, Johnny, do you want to play clarinet in the band? And Johnny's going to go, what's a clarinet? And that piece of paper is going to go in the garbage. Yeah. So what I explain to principals, if you have kids, your kids always recruit you. Well, I didn't go to Toys R Us because I wanted to go there, and I didn't buy Teddy Ruxpin, I'm showing my age, because I wanted Teddy Ruxpin. It's because my kid was going, Dad, I got to have this. Yes. So our job is to get the kids so excited and interested and wanting to knowing that they can play an instrument, we do matching and all that. And then they go home and say, Mom, all the kids are signing up for band. I played saxophone today. I want to do this. So our marketing, my business has two sort of ways of marketing. It's business to business, where we market to schools and districts. But once we're there, we market to the children.
To the consumer.
Yeah, exactly. So
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're talking basically that's how I got into music. So it's totally resonating. So I'm assuming that then, or clarify for me, you probably then go to the principal and say, hey, we've got this gig. We can do this for free. It doesn't cost you anything. All I need is for you to call an assembly, or you to at least allow me access to these kids. And once I get them. Yeah, once I get them in the room, then you expose them to the music, you show them all the instruments, you let them hear all the great, amazing things that they can play. Of course, they can't play it yet, but this is what they're going toward. And they get all excited, and then you match the kids with the different things. Is it only, so you're only doing band, you're not doing string instruments?
No, we just do band, and we do band from 4th grade and up, and we do a program we call Kinder Keys. We use a book called Musical Mozarts for K through 3rd graders. So, which was a great expansion for us because we had done band for a whole bunch of years, and we were getting that 4th through 8th grade, mostly 4, 5, and 6. But the group piano lessons, so we have 8 kids in a class. We bring in the keyboards. It's seamless again. It's a flyer that goes home. Parents want their kids to play piano. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I would say 80% of the schools that have band with us have also taken the piano program. That's business-wise, that does a whole bunch of things. It gives my teachers more work. They're there at the school longer. It preps those kindergarten kids for band, kindergarten, 1st grade, because they know they can play band. It has more music. It offers programs. A lot of schools do not have music programs for those younger kids, so it helps that educationally. And it was also the financial end of this. Some of these schools were getting small charter schools, small private schools, and trying to send a teacher. My teachers travel. They go to a bunch of different schools a week. So sending a teacher to a school for 10 kids in September, which may end up to be 7 in May, is not financially feasible anymore. So if I get 10 band kids, but I can also get 10 piano kids, now my teacher's there for a longer period of time, and sending a teacher there for 20 kids is financially more viable. So in all those aspects, it was a great addition, and has been really solid for us.
So do you then bill the parents monthly kind of thing, or do they pay for the whole semester, or how does that work?
It's mostly monthly. It's all credit card driven. I can't even tell you how technology has saved my life. I would not be running a national company now without technology. In the old days, my wife and I were folding bills and stuffing them, and she was typing out bills in a typewriter in our condo. Gosh. So, I mean, that was, when I started my company, there weren't cell phones, there weren't laptops, the internet didn't exist. So now everything is credit card driven. And I can remember desperately going to the mailbox on a Wednesday with payroll due on Friday and being short thousands of dollars, and going to the mailbox and counting checks and recording them in a binder and going to the bank and depositing them. So now everything is credit card driven. So parents can sign up for the full year and get a discount, or they do it monthly. We do rentals also, so they can rent an instrument from us. That's additional revenue also. Credit cards have saved my life. Automatic billing has saved my life.
Definitely. Yeah. And just getting back to the process. So that's an ingenious way to do it, because that, again, if that hadn't happened for me in 6th grade, they brought all the 6th graders into the basically the cafeteria. And we all sat into the cafeteria, and they played at the front of the room some tape recorder, because this was in the early 70s, right? Some tape recorder in the front of the room, and they gave us a little sheet that we had to score. We had to tell them whether we thought the note was higher or lower, whether we thought it was louder or softer, right? I mean,
we used that in the first bunch of years of my company. We were sitting at night recording, doing those tests. Grading them. So we used to go in there, with a player. And you're right. It was it was a Selmer oral test, I believe it was called, or something. And you would listen to high pitches of. I mean, it was like I can't even believe that we did that, and we did that for hundreds or thousands of kids in the fall. I can't.
Yeah. But see,
Forgot
that's
we
what,
did.
that was what it was though. And so without nobody in my family had done any kind of music, right? So without that, and then at the end of that test, they scored my test. I have no idea how, but they did. And they recommended from that test that I take orchestra. Now, how in the world did they know that I should take orchestra? I have no idea. Instead of band. I mean, of course, I look at it like, well, because my ear was so much more developed, I guess. I don't know. I mean, what in the world? So, yeah, and without that, then I went into the orchestra program in 7th grade and tried violin and went ew, and viola and went ew, and started with cello and went, yeah, that's cool, and when bass went, nah, it's too big, and went back to the cello. That's it. I mean, without that, I would not be here, and my kids would not be playing instruments. So it resonates completely, but I'm sure you're much more sophisticated in matching instruments and helping kids really hone in on what they might be drawn to. How do you do that? How do you help a kid really figure out in music what they're drawn to if they've never been exposed to music before?
There's two parts of that. So we do our recruiting consists of a demonstration. So we just got a new public school a few weeks ago, a late start. So myself and a fellow teacher, we went to the school. I had 225 kids in the gym, which was sort of wild. I've gotten better over the years of doing that. But so I talked to the kids, they settled down. I tell them why I'm here, what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be playing these instruments for you guys. It's really cool music. I can tell them a little bit about music. I tell them about how instruments are made, and we go through woodwinds and brass and percussion. So as a professional trumpet player, I start with trumpet, and I say, this is what a trumpet looks like. And I tell them, about brass and how it gets made, and there's curves, and how all instruments need vibration. I buzz my lips. And so I also tell them, I say, I played in elementary school and high school. I became a professional trumpet player. I even got to play with the president of the United States. That
Stops them in their tracks.
It usually gets some oohs and ahs. Sometimes it's quiet, and I go, "Hey, you guys, give it up for me, man!"
Yeah, hello.
They laugh. So, and I tell them that. I say I don't say that to brag, even though I don't mind bragging. But I'm telling you that when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and I was playing my trumpet, taking my trumpet to school, I never knew that I was going to play for the President of the United States. And I said, so music can take you on all these journeys. I tell them about jazz bands, orchestras. So then I pick up my trumpet and I play this great sounding thing. And that's the only one I sound great on because that's my instrument.
Yeah.
And then I demonstrate trombone. And then I have a woodwind. And if I'm by myself, I can do them all, but I'll have a woodwinds person there. And Gail played flute and clarinet and saxophone, telling the kids about them, and snare drum. So then we tell the kids that we're coming back tomorrow. Every one of you guys are going to get a chance to try 2 or 3 of these instruments. So, which they really like, because they don't understand that. Oh yeah, that old guy can play that, but why?
Right.
So
Right.
the matching is really a key thing. So the next day, we had I think 4 band directors there. We have sets of instruments on the tables. The kids come in a classroom at a time. We have modified this so much and improved it over the years. But I'll have 5 or 6 kids around my table. I'll say, hey, we're starting with the brass instruments, and this serves a couple of purposes. Number one, you need to physically find out. First of all, they already know what they sound like and what they look like, so they're sort of drawn to certain ones. Some kids just like the sound of flute versus saxophone or whatever.
Right.
So I said, you have to pick one of these and one of these and one of these. And then we physically can check that. So if a child says, I want to play trumpet, and I'm working with them and they can't buzz, and I'm working and I'm trying, you buzz your lips like that.
Yeah.
And some of them get it right away, and some kids struggle. I'll say, John, maybe trumpet is not, let's try a different one. They go, yeah, because they see the other kid's success.
Yeah.
So if I put that child on trumpet because he really wanted trumpet without trying him, he's going to fail at that, or see the other kids go well, and he's probably going to drop.
Right.
So so then same with, there are certain instruments that are a little trickier. Flute is one of them. There are some kids that flute sound pops out. Other kids, you work, say, you know what, maybe let's try clarinet. So, and when they do that, when they do get that great sound, and they look at my eyes and I look in their eyes, I say, that's the one, right? They go, yeah. So, then we're highlighting information and sending on the parents. So that is the instrument matching, and it's takes an excellent skill, and I have all master teachers that work for me that have been doing this for a long time and have seen thousands of kids on these instruments. So we know what to say and how to be positive, and those kids go out of there pumped up.
Yeah. Well, and probably
so then
you could probably add a picture right? You could probably bring a Polaroid and take a picture of that kid playing that instrument and the look on their face when they actually get success in that instrument. And that speaks volumes right there.
Yeah, it would. That's sort of an interesting idea. How could we do that? Like a Polaroid, and then take this home to your mom. Show
Yeah.
her you're holding the saxophone.
Yeah. And even if you do that, even if it's not that, if they have a cell phone, take a video of them on
Right.
their cell phone playing
Yeah,
that
that's-
instrument, making that. Oh my gosh, that's it. It's done.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have to think about that. I'm always open to new ideas, and I'll bring that up at the next staff meeting. How do we
Definitely.
get this in their hands?
Yes, because that the parent, it's all about the experience. You know, the kid can come home and be excited, but Johnny's come home excited about soccer before too, and then that first week, forget it. So yeah, but if they can see, and I'm sure you have all kinds of data because it's all out there, especially the K through 3 with the piano. The ability for that to impact their learning ability is just it's beyond belief how that helps them wire their brains for learning. Learning the basics of piano is going to give them more success than adding 1 + 1 beyond.
Yeah, and most parents know about piano. That was the other reason it became so successful. Is parents would be walking into the sign up when we did. Now all the signups are online, so we don't go to schools at
Yay!
7 o'clock anymore.
Yes.
75. But parents would walk in with their kids, and it's hard enough to get a kid to play trombone, and they would walk in and say, "Well, do you have piano? Do you have piano? Do you have piano?" Because parents know sort of like it's common knowledge piano is good for you. So that was another trigger on that. There was something else I was going to tell you about. I wanted to jump back to the setting up the company with the group lesson thing. Is that when I was young and as a professional trumpet player, there were thousands of jobs. I mean, there was in those days there was much more music work. So I would play a lot of gigs, and I'd go to the job and on a Saturday night, and there might be a band of 10 or 12 or 15 musicians on the bandstand, and let's say in those days I made $100 on a Saturday night. So it was typical for contractors, musical contractors, which is the leader, to charge double for their services. So, and I knew that. And so when I would go to play a gig with 15 guys, the leader would be charging $200 a person and giving us 100 and making the other. So he would make 1,500. So I'm sitting there going, he's on there three hours like I am playing this gig. He's making 1,500 and I'm making 100. Doesn't take long to figure. You don't have to be a rocket science to figure that out.
Right.
So I started contracting when I was young because pretty much everybody knew how to play in those days. The professionals I was with, you buy some music fronts, you get some music, you maybe get a sound system, and you book a gig. And all of a sudden now I'm on a wedding that I booked. So instead of making $100, there's 7 guys in the gig. I made 900 or whatever the number was.
Right.
So I've taught my children, who are all professional musicians, how to be musical contractors and how to book things and the power of those kind of things. So it was. I'm sometimes amazed when I've hired. You can imagine how many music teachers I've hired over 34 years, and musicians I've worked with. Is that. I see this I'll jump to this in a bunch of different ways that people are either afraid or can't put those concepts together. The concept of systems or wider based thinking. My daughter's graduated and she has some friends who graduated just recently. She's 22. So my daughter's playing professionally here in Chicago. She's teaching a lot for my wife's studio and some private stuff and doing gigs. So she has some friends that have graduated with different kinds of degrees, one in like early childhood or whatever. And her friends are coming here and they are interviewing and taking jobs that pay $12 or $14 an hour or $13 an hour and working 10 hours a day and disliking it greatly. Here's this 22-year-old. She's got this college degree, probably her parents or she has a lot of college debt, and she's working for $12 an hour in like a kinder care or, situation like that. And my wife and I have often discussed the entrepreneurial part of this is that we told my daughter, we said, and this particular friend asked us about interviewing because, we've done interviews and that's what we do. And we gave her some guidance on like how to interview well and do these sort of things. But this particular friend would be so much better off by putting a flyer in my neighborhood and a bunch of neighborhoods as an au pair and charging $20 an hour, running her own schedule, making much more money. It's just, and picking up 2 or 3 homes. She can make 5 times as much money doing that on her own than working for that corporation. Absolutely. And they don't, but they're afraid to do that, some people, or they don't have that independence. I've tried that with music teachers where I said, you know what, we're not going to go to that school anymore because of whatever reason. If you want that school and you want to independently do it, you can. And I know in my head, it's pretty easy to crunch the numbers that if that teacher taught there, they would make much more money than when I was hiring them to teach there because they take it all.
Right.
They get in a month or 2 and they can't do it. Oh, I got to have a steady check. It's like, really? I mean, I can't. It's like, you don't understand that entrepreneurs, especially nowadays, have so much more control over their life. And as I said earlier, I got a million stories. I go into Starbucks and I see 50-year-old men being interviewed by 30-year-olds, middle managers that have been cut from huge corporations that have had 20 years doing this. They got big houses in the suburbs. They got kids going to college and they're out of a job. Yeah. And I find that to me, it's like it's sad and a shock. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm never going to be in that position. Yeah. But you have much less control over your life when you work for people. You can be cut at any time. I don't care how big your job is or whatever, how much money you're making. You can be cut at any time. I've had friends in the neighborhoods that I've lived in where, they got this big corporate job, supposedly, and all of a sudden, Lucent's cutting 5,000 jobs in a heartbeat. Yeah. And it's like, really? Yeah. And so...
Yeah. So, but that is exactly what the entrepreneur has to deal with. So yes, it's scary. Yes. So this person, they think it's more secure to go work for a company, get the 401k, get the benefits, now get Obamacare, get what? Okay. They think that's more secure and they have a paycheck coming in once a week, once a month, whatever they get paid. But it's not. It is the least secure because, like you said, they have no control. Unless they're the CEO, and even the CEO's got to deal with the board and deal with the shareholders and blah, blah, blah. So how did you, at such a young age, first off, you had to, I would imagine, because you were a professional trumpet player. So you had to go gig to gig, and you had to go find the next gig. And you just had to go, well, I got to find it. It's just got to happen. I've got to figure out where to go and who to talk to, and you got to get into the right circles and all that stuff. But how did you go from playing gigs, like you said, that mindset of I'm making 100, he's taking 1,500. Okay, how can I make this work? What did you have to shift in your mindset to make yourself be the person who created the gig or who booked the gig instead of just the person who came in and played your trumpet?
Well, I want to say I've had a lot of thoughts when you were saying that money is a good motivation. But,
yes.
I've always had. My personality is a leader personality. I mean, really strong. So it just was obvious to me, and I knew I had the skills and stuff. So it was sort of an easy transition. When I was in high school, playing at our homecoming and starting to play weddings, like the singer might be the leader on the wedding or someone, a cousin would call and say, hey, I know you're in music. Can you give me a wedding band? I said, yeah, we can book that. So it was easy and natural to do those sort of things. It just was not hard. As I said, the last boss I had was when I was 17. It was a summer high school job. And then by the time I got to college, I was working so much professionally. We used to laugh about how many gigs you had in a month. All of my freelance friends, oh man, I had 22 last month. Oh, I had 13, and you would know January was going to be low and stuff, right. But you'd laugh about that. But there was enough work and okay, I'll come back to that part. When you did work as a trumpet player, I was a pretty good trumpet player, but even more importantly than being a pretty good trumpet player, I was on time, sober, ready to go. doing a good job. I had some mentors in the business. I said, never make the leader nervous. When the leader's on the bandstand and it's 7:45 and the bride's going to walk in that ballroom and you're not in your chair, not such a good idea. And he's sweating like, where are you? And so your professionalism in those circles and mostly any circles carries you so much farther. I was there ready to go, prepared, dressed well, and did a good job. So I worked all the time because of those kind of things. But there was, coming back to the check thing, is that my income fluctuated greatly by month and by number of gigs. And when I was in the theater, it would be a steady gig where if you were in the theater for a year, you worked 400 shows a year. But then all of a sudden the next show would be strings, damn strings, the string players and not horn players. So then you'd be off for 3 months or whatever, and you go back to freelancing. So it was a natural thing to have that kind of lifestyle. And as I said, my kids have that lifestyle now. They have great months and they have lower months. That's where the teaching part balanced some of that out. That's why most musicians do some teaching, because you have some steady income to balance that off. And then the company just sort of came about. As I said, we got some schools. I sat down and got a mail. It wasn't mail merge in those days, but I just, there were Avery labels, I think, in those days.
Yes.
And I got a list of schools and started sending a marketing piece out, and we would start picking them up. So it just sort of transitioned like that.
And so what would you say, since you have 3 kids and all 3 of them are in music, they are in music careers, doing very similar to what you did when you were younger, but obviously kicked up quite a few notches with today's music industry. What would you say was the most important thing you taught them to let them get comfortable with that lifestyle and embrace it and be able to navigate it successfully?
Well, the first thing is knowing that my wife and I were in that business gave them the confidence that they could do this, that there was more than. I remember my daughter in Los Angeles, she was a great orchestral classical player. And as we guided their lessons and summer conferences and orchestras and all those sort of things, I remember when my daughter moved to LA, my wife's friends saying, well, does she have a job? And we thought that was sort of a funny question. It was like, no, like if you're an actor going to LA, you don't go there having a job. No. You go there like trying to get work.
Searching for a job. Yeah.
And they couldn't believe they couldn't believe she'd have a job. She's going moving out there. No, that's not what musicians do. Yeah. So people move to Nashville, they move to New York. That's what, So, but we knew that there were other things besides being a classical player in an orchestra that you can make. My daughter has traveled all over the world numerous times with jobs you can't even. She just flew was it Portugal for a 20-minute gig? Okay, 20 minutes for a corporate gig. They flew her from LA. So there's so much other music out there. And ways to make a living. I was watching The Voice last night. If you happen to watch The Voice last night, did you see all those string players sitting there? There were about 20 of them playing. Guess what? My daughter wasn't on that gig, but she's on all kinds of gigs like that. And you wonder, how'd those string players get there? Well, I know how they got there because I was in the business. So being in the business, you know how sometimes there's lawyers in people's families, the dad's a lawyer, the mom's a lawyer, so their kids become lawyers, or they're accountants, so their kids become accountants. So my wife and I knew the music business very well as professionals and high-end people in this business. So we knew how to guide our children into not only being really fine players, but also understanding how they can make a living in this. So,
I got to tell you, you're speaking, and I just as you were talking, I had an amazing realization, and I will just be transparent with it right now. Power parents, playing the cello when I was in high school, I know for a fact that I had huge amounts of fear that I wasn't good enough. I mean, I was first chair, blah, 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 right? Always getting in under orchestras, whatever. But I know I was extremely insecure about my playing ability and told myself, "Oh, I don't want to make a career in my music because, then it takes the beauty out of it for me, and I just, then I can't just play what I want to play and what my heart says to play, and I have to play what somebody else says because they're paying me for it, blah blah blah." Okay? Really what that was me saying, "I'm scared crapless." Okay? I'm not going to curse. I'm scared to death, and I don't think I'm good enough. So I'm not going to do this. That I just copped to that right there, because I would have absolutely loved that career. So now I'm not saying I'm pushing my kids into it, because I'm not. I'm not in any way. All I'm saying to them is that you can do anything. And they know that because I've done other things, not music, but other things that I've wanted to do. You can do anything. And thank goodness, one of them, and I don't know whether the other one's going to choose this or not, because he plays trombone and he loves the trombone, but one of them is choosing music because he loves it and he knows he will be able to find a way, and he will be good enough and figure it out to find a way to make it work. So I'm so, even though I didn't do that, I'm so glad I was able to create an environment in other ways to help them do that. But you did. Did you come from a musical family, or did you just do this?
I came from a musical family. My dad was a professional drummer, part-time. He had a full-time job. He worked for Budweiser and delivered beer. And but on the weekends he played all the time. He played gigs, weddings, and he was a drummer. So I would occasionally go see him, and my mom sang and stuff. So we all in our family got an instrument. So they said, "What instrument do you want to play?" I said, "Well, trumpet sounds cool." And so I got a trumpet, and that's how I started. So the family was musical and stuff, but my parents were not. They didn't go to college. They knew I should go to college and stuff, but they didn't know how to pick a music school or anything like that. So I ended up at DePaul in Chicago, which had a good music school, but I never graduated. I didn't get a degree. By the time I was a sophomore in college, I was on the road with Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons and Bobby Benton and doing gigs. And it's like, I want to play professionally in that. So it was easy to leave that situation. But so I did come from a musical family, but how families usually, sometimes those families get more successful. So I became much more successful in what I did in the music world. So then, of course, that gave me more knowledge now to pick music schools and instruments for my children.
Your kids, yeah.
Exactly. So they went to high-end, Berkeley and Indiana and stuff. So they went to high-end places with the best teachers. So that's how that worked.
Yeah, and that's really, I was just transparent with that and just had that realization that I didn't follow my dreams because of my own fear. But I have to say, I don't regret that at all. I mean, every choice we make is a choice that puts us on a path. And I would not change my path for anything, because it's led me where I am, and it's allowed me to have my kids start a little further along the path than I did, which is what you're talking about. So your parents were musical, but they didn't make a career out of it. And then you came along, you were musical, you decided and figured out a way to make a career out of it, but you still struggled and had to figure out and, learn all these ropes and all that. And so now you can help your kids that if they chose this career, you could help them start leaps and bounds beyond where you started. That's our jobs. That is really how we as families and individuals progress, and then we also allow our whole society to progress in that respect. It's just so amazing. I'm just so blessed that I can watch my kids, because going back to when you were talking about matching kids with instruments, I mean, of course, I thought, well, my kids will play a string instrument. I mean, that's just the way it is. Mom plays a string instrument, so they're going to do it. Well, of course not. They go to this music store, and he starts buzzing his lips, with this guy, and I'm like, what are you doing? I don't even know how that works. The guys tell him, buzz your lips like this, and he instantly figured out, he knew how to buzz his lips, and he was drawn to the trumpet, and boom, that's it. Then the younger kid sees that, goes to listen to a band. We were, going to musical performances, sees the trombone. He's like, I want to do that. Most kids start on valve instruments before they go to trombone. He started right out with buzzing his lips on a trombone. So, as long as we can start our kids a little further along than we did we are, as far as I'm concerned, successful. So tell me about your kids. I mean, you gotta brag a bit about this because everybody listening is going to know what you're talking about and who you're talking about. So tell me what Brittany's doing.
Okay, so Brittany is 32. She's in LA. She's a violinist. Speaking of picking instruments, so I'm a trumpet player.
Yeah.
My wife's a singer and actress, so they're all string instrument players. So figure that. So Brittany is in LA. Oh man, she's worked with so many big people. Last week 2 weeks ago, she worked with Stevie Wonder, Nicki Minaj, Ariana Grande, Jennifer Hudson, and Seth MacFarlane in 1 week. So I thought, well, that's a big week for you, huh?
Yeah.
And and she's toured with Paul Anka. She told me the other day she may have a New Year's Eve gig with Paul Anka. They're talking about Paul Anka doing the inaugural. And I'm not going to get into politics.
Yeah,
and she
yeah.
She goes, I don't know if I'm going to do that. And I don't even want to go there. So, she did a few years back. She was on American Idol with P. Diddy. And so she texts me and she goes, I think 10 million people are going to see me on American Idol tonight. And I texted her back and said, okay, you did something bigger than your father.
Yeah.
So Brittany, and she's contracting. She's got a group called Pacific Coast Strings, which is doing huge weddings for big stars and stuff. So that's what Brittany's deal is in LA. She's, and she plays electric violin in some these hot violin groups where they have these 4 girls in short skirts and they're playing electric violin and doing all this rock and roll stuff. So she's working, I can't remember the name of that group, but she does a lot of those things. Some of those are big corporate things. She just came back from Spain a few months ago where they just flew out and did this corporate gig. So that's what she's doing. My son went to the, New School in New York City. He was involved in Berklee School of Music in Boston, which is, these are all like high-end schools. And Brittany went to Indiana. And so he auditioned at Berklee and he got in and he got a full ride, but he didn't go there, which sort of, I was like, okay. So that walked away from 150 grand or whatever that number is.
Oh my gosh.
So he ended up going to the New School in New York City, and he's a jazz player and a great player in New York City. And
but he plays what in jazz?
He plays bass and cello.
Oh, okay.
And he's real eclectic. He's totally different than Brittany. Brittany's hot LA blonde. Nick is an eclectic sort of. He could care a bit less about money. He plays sitar really, really well.
Wow.
Among some other things. So, but Nick's done some big jazz things. He did. Last year he was at the Bern, Switzerland Jazz Festival. So that's Nick. And then Kelly just graduated from Berklee in Boston, and she's playing professionally here in town. And she was in Boston when she was in college. She was doing shows, already theater shows. She loves the theater, so she was doing shows there. And actually, here's some interesting. So Brittany's in LA. And she gets a call from a friend, says, hey, we got this gig in Boston. Do you know anybody in Boston? So Kelly, my other daughter's in Boston. Brittany goes, yeah, my sister's there. So it was a huge, I can't remember the name of the conference, but it was a big internet conference, 15,000 people. So they want an opening deal, the opening of the conference, 15,000 people in the ballroom, whatever. So Brittany gets a hold of the producer, who's really cool, and she worked with him before. So Brittany ended up writing the charts. Electronically sending them to Kelly. Kelly booked the musicians in Boston and ended up doing this. It was just, a 20-minute opening for all these people, but they want music and they want this flashy stuff. So there's Kelly on stage with 10 other musicians playing these charts that Brittany arranged, and they both made a good amount of money. So here's, Kelly's a college student making $1,000 doing this gig, contracting it. So, those things are like
that's gold. Yeah, it's all networking and knowing people and being able to work together and figure it out. I'm telling you, my kid has gone beyond me in music. He's talking about theory stuff, and I'm looking at it with my eyes crossed, going, "What? Yeah. What are you talking? Mexillidian? What?" Right? Exactly. I have no clue. But wow. So, okay, Power Parents, what you can take away from this? I think I can sum this up with just get comfortable with uncertainty. Embrace it. Be proactive with it. Figure out what you're going to do next to make the next thing work and allow yourself to grow. And you will be able to open the door. And I can tell you, I've been in this online business world for 13 years. And I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they've been raised in it. They've seen mom have great times and not so great times. They've seen me go through the 2008 horror show that I went through with my business and come back up through the ashes like the beautiful phoenix and figure things out. And if you can do that, the world you will set up for your kids is one beyond what you can understand right now. But they will do things that you haven't even dreamed of, but they won't do them unless you set them up for them. Did I sum that up okay?
I think you summed it up great.
Fantastic. You know, Jim, like I said, could talk to you forever. So, but we can't. Our ears can only stand so much of these earbuds. So we're going to have to wrap it up. But I so enjoyed chatting with you, and I know we will chat with you again, I hope. But in the meantime, have an amazing day, and just enjoy the journey, right?
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. I hope I was helpful.
To get powered up for your day, just go to parententrepreneur.power.com and listen to any one of the over 100 episodes we've had so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.